but I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hi everyone, welcome back to The Body Serve. I'm James.
I'm Jonathan.
And we are at the midpoint of Roland Garros 2022. Iga Swiatek lost a set for the first time since Stuttgart.
Well, you kind of set people up for a bit of a heart attack if they haven't been following the tennis. It's a little bit further than the midpoint right now because as of this recording, all quarterfinal matches have been set.
I love this. This never happens for us. At the moment we're recording, we can talk about all the quarterfinals together, not in, future who we expect to be there. The men's and women's draws are at the same spot.
Before we get into the upsets, of which there were quite a few, let's just briefly mention what those draws are in the quarterfinals. Let's start with the women and then work backwards. So on the women's side, the top half, Iga Swiatek plays Jessica Pegula, Veronika Kudermetova plays Dasha Kasatkina, Martina Trevisan against Leylah Annie Fernandez, and Coco Gauff against Sloane Stephens. And what this represents is one WTA top 10 player making the final 8. And when you put it in those terms, you're tempted to think, well, oh my God, dire. But the people who are here, they all make sense.
We've got 3 American women here. One of them has been a runner-up. She's been in the second week a bunch of times. That's Sloane Stephens. Coco Gauff is, making her way through this draw in a really impressive and kind of grown-up way.
Defending her quarterfinal points from last year like it's no big deal.
Fernandez, the recent U.S. Open runner-up, is beating seeds, Bencic and Anisimova. Anisimova, who many people thought could have been the favorite to reach the final in the bottom half.
I'm pretty sure I had her making the semifinals.
Yeah, I think I did too. And Martina Trevisan, who made the quarterfinals 2020 at Roland Garros. So, mostly not top 10 players here.
And also coming off of a title.
Right.
This isn't coming out of nowhere.
And then on the top half, obviously Iga Swiatek, Jessie Pegula, who was the runner-up in Madrid to Ons Jabeur. Kudermetova has had a great season. And Dasha Kasatkina turns it on every once in a while, and it feels like she has a game made for clay. So, yeah, this is the WTA in 2022. Get used to it. This is not the top 10, but it's a pretty good group. I like these quarterfinals.
It's hilarious to me how quickly the discussion changes around the WTA tour and the current state of it from almost day to day. Because heading into the third round, the round of 16, as the draw was devastated, there was a sense of panic as to okay, this parity thing, this depth thing, this has gone too far. What is happening? This is untenable. And then the quarterfinals happen, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, perfect sense.
Right. And I understand that maybe where the WTA is right now is not everyone's ideal, and it's not my ideal as well. I like to have a crop of consistent, high-achieving players. I like to see rivalries develop. I totally get it. But this is what we have, and I am going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I was talking to a friend about this. This is certainly an odd moment in women's tennis history. I'll give you that. Because in the top 10 throughout history, there's almost always been a GOAT, right? There's always been a Chrissy, a Martina, Steffi, Serena. There's always been someone to take over, and pretty quickly. And we're in such a weird stage. But when we look back, in retrospect, will one of these top players be a legend? Will Iga be that person?
But we've also always had those consistently top 10, top 20 players who maybe peaked with a slam final, like an Anke Huber, or super talented players who were mostly in the top 10, in and out of the top 10, showed slam winning potential, and in fact did that a couple times in Mary Pierce. But the overall week-to-week, year-to-year statistics weren't there. So I think, to your point, it's always easier to look back and make judgments about top 10s rather than the times that we're actually living them.
And there were times in the 90s where sports writers were saying, this tour sucks. It's so boring. All it is Steffi winning everything and no one else can play. And
I grew up in that time
Right.
on the women's tour.
And in retrospect, I don't think that we look that badly on the 90s now, or I don't think we should. So I think this period in women's tennis it's unique, but I do think it'll look differently in 10, 15 years.
And at that time, if you had a top 10 player or, say, a top 8 seed lose before the third round, it was a calamitous event. There were scenes like Steffi Graf losing before the fourth round, unheard of.
It's like Djokovic or Federer, in the 2010s, losing in an early round. It's unheard of.
And the reason for that was because the gap between the top players and the lesser ranked players was so wide. It need not be repeated again, but I will repeat it again that is just not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Where we started at this tournament, we were on course by seeding to have Kerber play Sakari in the quarterfinals, to have Kontaveit play Krejcikova, Swiatek play Pliskova or Pegula, and that has happened. Badosa against Sabalenka. And even then, if not for those two, Rybakina or Danielle Collins, that didn't happen either.
Yeah. A few of those players were knocked out very early. So let's go through the upsets first. Barbora Krejcikova, defending champion, number 2 seed. We were not sure what to think about her form. I definitely overestimated. I really believed in Babs and her new kit. However,
how many rounds did you have her winning? I think I had her winning maybe 2.
3 or 4.
That definitely was a lot.
I think I had her in the quarters.
She hadn't played on tour since the end of February in Doha.
Right, but she's a woman of mystery. I was giving her that benefit. I did the opposite to Medvedev, and he overachieved. So Krejcikova loses to Diane Perry, who, unfortunately, I had never heard of, but is quite successful on clay in the lower leagues.
You just gonna put your ignorance out there like that?
Yeah. I saw the name, and I was like, you know what? That sounds like one of those fake names they make up in tennis video games. I have literally never seen her name.
Oh my god.
Ons Jabeur, we all know.
This was a big one.
I am so sorry to Magda Linette because we did not even mention her name. We did not utter her name in the preview episode because I just assumed it was an easy win. And damn. Number 4 and number 5, Sakari and Kontaveit. Sakari lost to Karolina Muchova, who I think everyone is excited to see back, but unfortunately left Paris in a boot.
Yeah, I mean, the bad luck just keeps coming for her.
Kontaveit still has the chance to rise to the number 2 ranking despite losing in the first round. Now, people are mad, but remember, it's a 12-month ranking system. This is just how it works.
At this point, the only person who can stop her is Jessie Pegula if she wins the title.
Okay.
So it's
still possible.
It's still possible.
But,
it's still possible for what?
For her to do it.
I think it's more likely that Kontaveit will be number 2 at the end of this tournament.
It is. Samsonova, who we thought might be a really tough out for Swiatek in the third round. She lost in round 1 to Danka Kovanic.
Man, people were really mad at us for how much we talked up Samsonova on the preview episode.
Why? Did it influence people's picks?
It seems so.
Oh. But I did say, hey, Kovanic was a runner-up at Charleston last year. She's good on the surface.
The one upset that you just had to see as a distinct possibility, and it ended up coming to fruition, was Garbiñe Muguruza losing to always the seed killer Kaya Kanepi.
Yeah, I believe there are only 3 active players who've beaten more seeds in the first 3 rounds of majors than Kaya Kanepi. This woman, she's ageless. Emma Raducanu, the number 12 seed, lost in the second round to Sasnovich. Sasnovich went on to beat Kerber.
Simona Halep on course to play Iga Swiatek in the 4th round at Roland Garros for seemingly the 17th time, went out in round 2 to Zhang Qinwen,
who the kids are calling Queenwen. And if you watch her play, you can see why.
And then the other women's seed of note to fall, Karolina Pliskova in round 2.
To the number 227 former college player, Leylah Jean-Jean.
But back to Miss Halep for a moment.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Simona Halep was very open in her press conference and explained that she had a panic attack during her match with Zhang. She was actually leading. She won the first set. And she said she had a, quote, little panic attack, let's say. It's new and I don't know how to handle it. It was tough to breathe, and I was not very clear in what I'm doing. It was a very difficult moment. I can understand why it happened because I had 2 tough years with injuries and a lot of pressure with the pandemic and stuff. So probably today I just broke down a little bit.
This was after Patrick Mouratoglou. If you go to his Instagram page, you can find the full text of it. And his bio is just in all caps, the coach. And along those lines, he said, preempting Simona Halep, I've always been proud of my successes with my players, but then I also have to acknowledge when I'm not doing a good enough job. The results we've had the past month in Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros are insufficient for someone of at Simona Halep's caliber, and I take full responsibility for them. She is fully dedicated, motivated, gives it everything on every ball. She's a champion. Her track record speaks for itself. I expect much better from myself, and I want to extend my apologies to her fans who have always been so supportive. Now, the ego of this man.
What?
Is it ever not about him? He's shown now that if the only way that he can make it about him is to throw himself under the bus, he is willing to do it.
I don't get it. Why he would center himself in this. Simona was very vulnerable in the press and she explained what was going on. And it doesn't really have a lot to do with him. It has to do with her. And before the tournament started, she talked about the calf injury that she suffered last year. She missed Roland Garros and Wimbledon, where she was the defending champion. She said it was the worst injury of her career. And it brought her to a really dark place, like a really low place emotionally.
She even said that she contemplated retiring. Mm-hmm. She was close to retiring at the start of this year. And then she hooked up with Patrick after having this renewed vigor with her tennis.
And she credits Patrick with bringing back a lot of her fire and confidence. And I think she is someone who likes to have a strong leader in her camp. But so it's totally understandable that she's still feeling the after effects of such a difficult year, the pandemic, and when you come back on court, you may not understand what's happening in your head, and it may be very difficult to deal with it. And so I hope she's okay. And I hope that Patrick sort of stays a little quieter.
There's no chance of that happening. Let's talk about a few of the players who are still around, some of the notable matches that have happened, some of the breakout players, just the things that come to our mind, the things we noticed.
Just a little roundup of the early rounds.
I think we should start with Zhang Qinwen, because this seems like a moment.
Okay. She's still a teenager. She's 19 years old. She has been talking about how she was eager to face Iga Swiatek. And you could just feel it. Feel it in your bones that she was really going to take it to her.
Watching that match, the first set was an all-out brawl.
Wow.
Aided by Iga, uncharacteristically of her during the last few months, during her win streak, letting up at crucial moments in that set.
Mm-hmm. And it felt that she didn't really have a plan, and that Zhang was showing her something different that maybe some of the other opponents aren't. Zhang was doing a lot of heavy hitting, heavy topspin forehands that were pushing Iga back, and then she could finish the point with a flat down the line backhand. Late in that set, she kind of did a little tricky forehand drop shot with Iga way in the back of the court.
But also, one of the things that I feel a lot of the women have not been able to do well against Iga during her imperious stretch is return her serve. Because Iga's serve is not that great, Bob. It just, I mean...
The second serve you just have to attack it.
And on average, you would think that her serve would have been broken more than it has been. That more pressure would have been put on her within matches because of her serve. And Zhang was able to do that today. Added to which, those short-angled power shots that Iga loves to hit to really open up the court and finish points, Zhang was able to get to those, not routinely, but not have it be as big a weapon for Iga.
Mm-hmm. This, watching her game was such a revelation today. Like, she really could be a superstar.
Okay, we're not doing that.
No, but, you know, the minute you let Iga take control of a rally, like, she's going to try to pound you into the ground. Mm-hmm. And Zhang did a good job in the first set of not letting that happen.
Into the second set, where Iga bageled, another bagel, you may look at the score and think, well, that's Iga for you. But Zhang was going through some physical issues in that second set. It seemed to be, when she went down 3-love and called for the trainer, that it was a leg issue. Came back with it strapped. And we find out after the match that more than the leg issue, she was dealing with period pains.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And this is something that I think, thankfully, we're hearing women athletes talk about more and more in just the last few months. I forget her name escapes me, but a top golfer talked about this a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is something that obviously is going to influence match. How many matches have we sat there and watched like idiots, not considering that this could be a reason why somebody is quote unquote underperforming? Right. It's none of our business. But also, yes, but it's a fact of life.
It's a taboo to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a reason the tampon and maxi pad ads use this blue coloring. People can't even handle thinking about menstruation.
Can you imagine if Andrei Rublev had a period on a tennis court? If some of these men had to deal with menstruation while playing tennis.
We would certainly hear about it.
Like, I mean, they would be begging to play best of 3 at slams.
Yeah. But it is a good reminder to everyone, including us, that we shouldn't push too hard on bathroom breaks. Because we really never know what someone is dealing with.
So bottom line, Zhang Qinwen, remember that name. Apparently she's given herself the nickname of Anna. That's her
English name?
Perhaps.
All right. I mean, because we're probably not pronouncing her first name correctly. One of my faves, Dasha Kasatkina, has been cruising. Fun fact, I know you love fun facts. Mm-hmm. She's lost the fewest games out of anyone so far. 10 games lost. She's served 2 bagel sets. And she has tied with a few others for the shortest match of the tournament at 54 minutes. She beat Shelby Rogers, who is like designed to take out seeds at majors. Beat Camila Giorgi.
While Papa Giorgi was caught smoking.
Vaping, I guess?
I assume it's vaping. I didn't see the device, whether it was a cigarette or a vape.
It was funny. He was under a towel and then emerged blowing smoke out of his mouth.
This is only the 3rd quarterfinal that Kasatkina has made in her career at a slam. Following back-to-back French Open and Wimbledon quarterfinals in her breakout year 2018. Mm. And for me, that does a disservice to her talent. And for me, she's one of the more fun players to watch on either tour. Yes, no, maybe so?
I agree. You know I love her.
Miss Angelique Kerber.
She came in the tournament fresh off winning a title. She could have been tired, totally worn out, and then she gives us the best first round match of the tournament against Frech. Both players saving match points. Kerber saved 2 match points in the 3rd set. They're on an outside court with a bad camera angle. The crowd atmosphere was incredible. People were just so enthralled by this battle. And Frech, for her part, was, scrambling in the back of the court, and returning everything deep. She made it really difficult for Angie, but it was so much fun to watch.
Kerber came back, won her second match before going out to Sasnovich in round 3.
Yes.
Coco Gauff. We mentioned
Coco.
that she has defended her quarterfinal points from last year. I personally picked her to make the semifinals. One of the few good picks I made on either draw.
She beat Kai Kanepi, beat Elisa Mertens.
Easily.
Yeah.
She bageled Mertens in that second set.
Mertens is, as you know, the third round queen, but she made it to the fourth round here. And Coco is just, I feel like she's playing such mature, kind of level-headed tennis. She's built a game surprisingly around defense. And that's really not, I don't think that's what people thought of her when she was younger. You know, we saw a big serve, we saw big ground strokes, but defense and her speed is really like what's getting her these wins, I think.
We saw that moment, was it in round 1, where she had a word with the umpire ever so calmly?
I absolutely loved this. She just went over, she was given a warning for coaching. And she explained that since she was little, she has asked her dad not to say anything, not to make any hand movements.
She said, I cannot control the coaching. Talk to God.
Right. It was too funny.
No, she did not say that.
I know.
Okay.
Venus Williams said that.
Yes.
About the wind.
Mm-hmm.
This is Coco Gauff's 5th time in the second week of a slam. She's 18 years old, and I will not hear complaints about Coco's developing too slowly. Look at her. Look at the resume.
It's exactly on time for me.
Sloane Stephens, who has a much more unorthodox career, a much more up and down career, sets up this quarterfinal with her countrywoman Coco Gauff. Only their second meeting. Sloane beat her at the US Open 6-4, 6-2.
Sloane has won the US Open as her sole slam title. This we know. She's a runner-up to Simona Halep at the French Open. But the French Open is by far her best tournament.
Yes.
Not just
it
best
really
slam, her best tournament, period. She's made the fourth round, at least the fourth round, 8 times in Paris. She's made the quarterfinals minimum 3 times, including this effort. She's only made the quarterfinals of a slam 7 times in her career.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where she's feeling her best. And I mean, one of the stats, Victoria Kesa pointed this out on Twitter after she won the last 12 games against Jill Teichmann in the 4th round. Sloane was down 2-love, so close to being down 3-love in that match, and then did not lose another game. She lost 3 points in the second set.
3 points.
3 points.
Against someone who was supposed to beat her. Teichmann is better on clay, or so we thought.
Well, no. Teichmann is in much better form.
Yes.
Because Sloane had lost all 4 of her clay court matches leading up to the French Open. Right. But what this proves is that once again, if Sloane Stephens is feeling herself, there are few players on either tour who can go on a roll like her when she's in full flight.
And form coming into a tournament means very little for Sloane.
So back to Victoria Kesa's point. She did that against Jill Teichmann. 12 in a row. She also did it 2 rounds earlier against Sorona Cirstea. She was down 6-3 2-love to Cirstea and then won the last 12 games of that match, doing all of our bidding in that match. Like, that was such a star-worthy turn for Sloane Stephens with that performance.
You know, tennis is tough because, you know, there should be awards for these types of performances, right? If you win 12 games in a row, basically a virtual double bagel, you should get an award or some extra money. Because if you don't win the tournament, you've lost. No?
This is getting dangerously into participation medals. What is that what you call it? Participation
yes, I know.
Awards?
You grew up in Jamaica. You didn't have such things. But as a millennial growing up in the U.S., we did. participation trophies, perfect attendance. What was a good citizenship awards?
Yeah, it's a no for me.
No? Okay, fine.
It's a no for me.
Canadian Leylah Fernandez had never won 3 consecutive matches on clay on the WTA Tour. And this week, she reaches the quarterfinals by beating Bencic and Anisimova.
This might be the most impressive performance of week 1 for me.
Perhaps.
Because how many people were really talking about Leylah coming into this tournament?
No.
Let's move to the men's draw, where the seeds progressed far more steadily than the women's side.
In the quarterfinals, we have number 1 Djokovic versus number 5 Nadal, Zverev versus Alcaraz, Ruud versus Rune. I know that was bad, but it was better than Rune, right?
I'm not doing anything with that.
And number 7 Rublev versus surprise quarterfinalist Marin Cilic, but should be a surprise. We'll talk about that later.
6 of the top 8 seeds on the men's side advanced to the quarterfinals.
Yes, and the top 12 men's seeds made the third round, which is the first at Roland Garros since 2009. The top 9 made the fourth round. So, a lot of consistency here. Very few surprising upsets early on.
Do you know what also was very consistent on the men's side?
What?
A lot of men having big chances to score big upsets, and like a formula that worked perfectly every time, they all coughed up their leads.
Yes.
And failed to close.
Can I say, I find men's tennis very predictable. I find the patterns very predictable. When a player challenges someone on their serve and has a few break points and fails to break, almost like clockwork, that person gets broken immediately afterward. These top seeds, a few of them, including Zverev, Taylor Fritz, Alcaraz even, Felix Auger-Aliassime, getting pushed by these unheralded guys, losing the first 2 sets in some cases, and really, it was a predictable outcome. The top guys would pull through in 5 sets. And I think it shows there's a big gulf, not in talent, but in experience and in match management.
And belief, frankly.
Yes.
Because Ramos Vinolas should have beaten Carlos Alcaraz.
Right. And this guy is a great dirt baller, right? He's not unknown. But you had a few Latin American guys who, Baez is somebody who's proven how good he is on clay, has won a title, but we have Rodriguez Taverna against Fritz, Varillas against Felix. Who expected this?
I picked Baez to beat that guy, and so I'm particularly salty about that one.
Oh, you want to talk about being salty? I picked Davidovich-Fokina to reach the semifinals.
I picked him to go far as well. That's another one that folks are mad at us about.
Where are you getting this?
On Twitter.
Are people are adding you?
Yeah.
And saying they're mad?
That they blame us. Yeah.
Then tune into real experts then.
Back to the Ramos Vinolas Alcaraz match, because you watch that match and you watch Carlos come back, and it feeds the machine of hype for Carlos Alcaraz, right? He did amazing things to come back and win that match. Just absurd, long, improbable points he won to break serve late in that match. But also, bad decision making from Ramos Vinolas, imprecise shot making, and failing to close out points when he should have.
Right. And it does show you that, there are ways to beat these guys, and Alcaraz is one of these guys at this point who we expect to pull through those matches. It's happened very quickly, but there are ways to beat them, right? Carlos didn't really appear to have a game plan for quite a while in that match, but this is the benefit of best of 5 for somebody who's fit enough.
Well, he was able to pick up a bit of a game plan when he was apparently told to serve and volley 3 times in a row by his coach.
Yeah.
He was caught after the match. Well, he caught himself. He was asked, so why did you decide to do that then? Well,
the coaching is so obvious. if you're in the stadium, you can literally see it, right? You can actually hear coaches talking to players, and it's not being called. Patrick Mouratoglou supposedly says that coaching is going to be allowed in the ATP. We'll see if that's true. But there's clearly an enforcement problem.
But there's also a difference between being allowed on the ATP and then at a Grand Slam, which we've seen on the WTA Tour before.
They make their own rules. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, all these men scraped by the skin of their chinny chin chin? Is that how you say it?
Another mixed metaphor. Skin of their teeth.
Okay.
Or by the hair on their chinny chin chin.
Oh,
That's
okay,
it.
got it.
Yes.
And they've kind of settled into where they are now. With the one caveat being Nadal tested so much by Felix Auger-Aliassime in the round of 16.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Taken to 5 sets in the 4th round at the French Open.
Wow. Let's hear it for Felix. Because although he lost this match, because Nadal ramped it up and ended it really quickly.
You were in the kitchen at the end of the 4th set into the 5th set, and you saw Nadal do his little stomp, 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 stomp. And you were like, well, here he comes.
Uh-oh.
Here he comes.
He won that one game, and here he comes. No, when the double stomp is coming, you know he's into it. Because the match felt...
flat.
It felt flat. It wasn't particularly great. It just felt like it was lacking energy. And it wasn't because Felix was lacking energy. I mean, he brought it. But he's not a very demonstrative player.
There's that. And then you also got the sense of reverence. Like, he's got his uncle half in his camp at that point playing Nadal. He's got Rafa's uncle half in his camp playing Nadal at this tournament on his home court on his Philippe Chatrier. You know, like...
Yeah.
And Felix's demeanor is not one of, say, like a Holger Rune, right? Where today, after he won his round of 16 match, he goes and digs up a tweet from, like, Roland Garros or Tennis TV from a week and a half ago, giving the projected quarterfinalists.
Yeah.
And then with, like, replying with a wink or something like that. Like, we get it.
Like, dude.
We get it.
Stefanos is, like, in a bad place right now. Just leave it.
Like, why are you consistently doing the most? Just like, it is so cringe.
Yeah. Just for a second, let's talk about the pronunciation, because it's a difficult name.
It is.
It really is. And
are you saying I've butchered it?
No. I'm not saying that I know how to say it either. But I heard Caroline Wozniacki say it, and I feel like she should be the expert. Mm-hmm. She's Danish. And then I saw people on Twitter saying, no, she said it wrong. I'm like, but she's Danish. Like, what? I don't get it. So a lot of the British commentators have just taken to saying un, like O-O-N. But there is like a phlegma. That's not the word. Phlegm. Like hun.
Okay.
Like in the throat. That's what I heard Caroline say.
I mean, we are heading into Pride Month, so this is Holger's time to shine.
Stop. The apologies. Let him come. Anyway, back to Felix and Rafa. Felix did a great job. You're doing amazing, sweetie. Like, the serve was on point, the forehand, the scrambling. I felt that he was so prepared for this match. The Toni Nadal thing is so awkward. Mm-hmm. Felix is paying him, presumably, to be like a part-time coach.
I should hope so.
Nadal is Toni's protege, his creation.
His kin.
Yeah, and Toni is there. And instead of sitting in one player's box, he chooses to sit in the president's box right near the players, right near the service line.
And allegedly
what the hell?
Allegedly after the match, he said he was rooting for Rafa.
Come on. Like, dude, you can't do that. Even if you were, because he's family, why would you say that out loud?
Yeah, see, that's the only thing I take issue with. Maybe you keep that to yourself.
Well, I'm not going to argue about where your heart is, right? But publicly and to your player, you have to convince them that you are with them 100%.
Right, but Felix has a whole ass full-time coach, separate and apart from Toni Nadal. Yeah. Toni's there as a consultant. My point is, this all makes sense to me.
Yes.
This doesn't seem like something to get all torn up about.
No, I do feel like people were making a lot of the Toni Nadal thing. I think people were doing the most. It's a weird situation. I mean, But we had sisters playing each other on the WTA tour for many years, right? Like this happens.
For me, it's not that weird at all. The only thing like kind of odd is that Toni would say that out loud. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But that's his business.
Right. But Nadal pulled through that. He didn't really seem to be showing any signs of physical strain. But I don't, his game wasn't in tip-top shape.
No. He's been scratchy at points, even when he's won straight set matches early in the tournament. He's had blips, stretches of a couple games where it's like,
Yes. And we see this with older players.
Mm-hmm. After what happened in Australia, I am not going to take that as reason to say he doesn't stand a chance against Djokovic, because I would be a buffoon to do that.
Oh, to make any prediction whatsoever?
Especially against him at Roland Garros.
Yeah.
Did we not live through the fall, October 2020 Roland Garros, where
it was cold, he was expected to lose.
It was under the roof, it was with different balls, it was super cold, and it was just, okay. And so now what I've been seeing a lot lately is folks saying that this is what Nadal does. He plays down his chances so that he can, not have the expectation of winning, and then also come out looking like a warrior champion when he does.
Right. So we honestly don't know what kind of form he's going to come out with against Djokovic. Like, he has to play better than he did against Felix.
Yes.
Will he? But there is truth to that. Like, there is maybe, you could call it some false modesty, that he does typically try to underplay his chances, say, oh, I'm not the favorite at Roland Garros, even when he clearly is, not this year, but in previous years. And he fools like ESPN broadcasters, right? All the time. You were just watching, what was it? Pardon the interruption?
Mm-hmm.
When Nadal is a little bit doomsday in his predictions about his body, that always carries over through like the mainstream press.
Well, it's different now too, because he is unmistakably at the end of his career.
Yeah.
We don't know when it will happen, but given his tendency to speak about himself and his game like that from when he was in his 20s, when he's doing that now with that kind of realistic humility, that sounds different. That sounds like the end is really near, when it could just be Rafa being like, hey, I'm just here smelling the flowers. Like, this is cool. I get to play Roland Garros again. Like,
this feels like bonus.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the Novak-Rafa quarterfinal, the schedule. Rafa has played one night match so far. The night matches here at Roland Garros are very strange. It's a new phenomenon. There's
second year, I think they're doing it.
Is it?
I think so.
Yeah. Chatrier has a roof, just in case. There's one match. That's the night match. Therefore, it's always a men's match.
Except for once this tournament. One match
and it was
has
a
been a
French
women's match.
Player, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
This is just nothing more than an almighty cash grab by the French Federation.
Right.
That's all it is.
Because
that is all it is.
You can sell tickets for a one-session night match.
One match. And how much are you charging? These exorbitant prices for one match. It's crazy to me that this is happening. And then you have players with not before 8:45 p.m. start time.
8:45.
Like, what the?
What is that? Like, this is where I'm pissed off for both players. If this match goes long, they're going to be playing until what? 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Then they have to do press. They have to cool down.
They're going to
It's unfair.
If it's a 5-set match, they're not getting back to their hotel room until like 5 a.m.
Right.
And then you have to wind down. I can't, after working a night shift, getting home at like 11, the earliest I can go to bed or fall asleep is 3-4 hours after that. Minimum.
Yes, and this is very physical work. It's just, if you have one match for a night match, why does it need to start not before 8:45? To me, that's a failure of scheduling.
And if you're going to take this approach and then have it be, well, for people to get their money's worth, they have to get minimum 3 sets, and thus it must be a men's match, even though it was probably going to be a men's match to begin with, because that is the sexist nature of the system.
Right.
You could easily start it at 7 And say on some nights you have 2 women's matches
Exactly.
starting at 7, or just the one match. Like it's mind-boggling to me. This whole business of it's unfair to Rafa that he's playing the night match. I don't like it that he's playing the night match, but I can't be mad about it.
I can't say it's unfair.
I can't be mad about it.
Djokovic and Nadal have both played one night match so far. Alcaraz has played three of his 4 matches at night. And I think you can clearly see what's happening here. They know Alcaraz is generating a lot of engagement on social media. He is who they've chosen for the new star, and he probably will be that person.
No, but he's also generating a lot of interest on his own organically.
Yes.
And that's borne out in some of the... I saw something on YouTube whereby of Djokovic, Nadal, and Alcaraz highlight videos or whatever French Open videos of those 3 players. His had the most interest.
Right.
Numbers are starting to bear out his presence in the game.
So he's getting... And I don't even know if it's a prime spot. Like, I don't know if players want to play at night, but he's getting these night matches. Zverev is complaining how Alcaraz is getting special treatment. It's like, yeah, hello, have you ever seen the scheduling at a major? Do you think there was a time where you got that special treatment? Yes, indeed.
Well, the point is it's not happening anymore because he is who he is, a failed top 10 player who has yet to beat a top 10 player at a Grand Slam, who is now getting to be long in the tooth for a tennis player to match his unnecessary height. And
no body shaming.
There's no, it's
That's
just a matter of fact.
He can't help that.
And now you are being looked past because you have done, allegedly, some horrendous things that people won't abide, and your results do not make you undeniable.
But let me say, like, outside of the abuse allegations, he seems like such a nice guy, right?
Oh my God. The point is, you are no longer organically part of the good conversation, and that is entirely your doing. Mm-hmm. So while some of the things that he's saying are absolutely true, they are also absolutely self-serving.
Right.
And I don't care about what's deleterious to this man anymore. I just don't.
Putting my fan hat on for a second, I'm just upset about this French Open for Rafa because he's gotten a historically difficult draw, and now he has to play Djokovic at night at 8:45. It's been chilly in Paris.
Is it a historically difficult draw? Well, I guess
if he continues,
yes,
it will be.
Yes, but up until this point, it hasn't been. It's been
no. But fan hat back off. I'm looking forward to the match. I'm not making any predictions about form. Djokovic is getting through his matches very easily. But we'll see.
I'm not looking forward to it at all. I do not enjoy this matchup.
Yeah.
So
I actually don't even enjoy the tennis that much.
Yeah, I don't know what you were just saying because I know that to be untrue.
Did I say I was looking forward to it?
You did say you were looking forward to it.
Well, maybe that was a lie. I'm looking forward to it being over. So it has to happen for it to be over.
We talked earlier about how so many of the top men went through unnecessary 5-set matches and that the challengers were unable to close them out. One such player who emerged on the winning side of those encounters once too many before it caught up to him was Stefanos Tsitsipas.
Yeah. So Stefanos had some difficult matches early on. I was, writing in this agenda, he's got to get it together because if he wants to get to the final and win, he can't be worn out by the likes of Musetti, Kolar. It just can't happen. And what happened today is that he lost to Holger Rune.
See, that was a different pronunciation too. We'll have to work on it.
Yeah, we're workshopping it. And he came out of that match just, shattered, right? I watched some of his press and it was kind of difficult to watch.
There is one thing he can do to help his career right now, and neither of us thinks he will do it. And that is to distance himself from his family. Like, Daddy Pass has to go, right? You are stagnating. You made the final of the French Open last year, was 2-0 up on Djokovic. The end of the rainbow was in sight. It was there. You were stone's throw from getting the jackpot.
Mm-hmm. And okay, it's Djokovic. Fine. Like, I get that he's going to come back and win. But what's stopping you from reaching a second French Open final? And this was a pretty soft draw compared to a lot of people.
Well, that's it, right? The bottom half of the draw was an opportunity for everybody. And lo and behold, it looks like it may be Marin Cilic, who is playing the best tennis
Can you imagine?
of the four.
So, okay, let's talk about Medvedev and Cilic. Medvedev was sailing through the draw. There were no expectations for him at all, and he was quietly making his way through these matches easily. And he beat Kecmanovic, which I did not expect.
No, I had Kecmanovic winning.
Yeah. So the draw has broken open. You still have the 2 seed in at the time, but only a few hours later, Marin Cilic utterly destroyed him.
I have never seen Marin Cilic play like this. And I say that because I did not watch the 2014 US Open final. I didn't watch it.
Really?
No, I was doing something else.
Oh.
That predated this podcast. I had
did.
no
You didn't
professional
have to.
obligations to watch that match.
It was mere months before we started.
Yeah, and this happens, it happens a few months, a year, not too long ago, where Marin Cilic looked completely lost on a tennis court. He's still only 33 years old, but it looked like his best tennis was behind him. He was at that pivotal stage in his career where you just don't know if there is another purple patch. And boy, was this a purple patch today, because it was eye-opening stuff. Yes, Medvedev is playing on his least favorite surface. He has just come back from hernia surgery. All that stuff. Medvedev didn't play well. Yes. But Cilic was relentless. And he was feeling himself so much to the point where on his first match point, receiving serve on the ad court, second serve from Medvedev, out wide to what would be Cilic's backhand, Marin runs all the way around it to try and hit a glory shot winner to win the match. Because that's how well things were going for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it hit like the back of the court,
But he could lose that match point and be confident that he would get another one.
I mean, he was up 5-1 in the third set.
Right.
So,
Granted, Roland Garros is his least successful major, but not unsuccessful. He is the junior boys champion in 2005, beating Andy Murray in the final. It's his 6th time in the second week, and his 3rd quarterfinal.
he's now won 30 matches at Roland Garros, matching the 30 minimum that he's won at the other 3 slams. He's the only active player outside of the top guys. I assume Andy Murray's in there, the big 4. It's either the big 3 or the big 4. I assume it's the big 4 in this case, to have won 30 matches at all 4 slams.
Another record, Felix Auger-Aliassime is the first 2000s baby to reach the second week of all 4 majors. And his last 4, you just can't argue with it. Quarterfinal, semi, quarter, round of 16.
One last note on the men's side before we move on to some et ceteras. Jannik Sinner had to retire from his match against Andre Rublev today, winning the first set and then having a recurrence of leg issues, losing the second set and then retiring, I believe, down 2-love in the third set. And for all his prodigious talent, this result and what happened today underscores what will be probably his biggest concern in moving to the next level: the physical deficiencies in his game.
Yeah.
Because while this was unfortunate that this was an injury that happened to him, it's not a one-off thing. A few et ceteras before we finish this episode.
Madison Keys and Taylor Townsend are playing doubles together. They have beaten 2 seeded teams to reach the quarterfinals.
Number 7, Dolehide and Sanders, and number 9, Muhammad and Shibahara. Madison, for her part, made the round of 16 at this tournament.
Yep.
Before losing in 3 to Kudermetova today.
COVID is still a thing. Remember that?
At the start of the tournament, it seemed like there was a possibility that this could become a huge storyline for this tournament. One that nobody was really paying attention to, nobody really had the bandwidth for. Like, at this point, do we really, 2 years, right? 2 years,
Yeah.
Almost 2 years after tennis has returned,
Almost,
for COVID to finally derail a tournament. And of course it would make sense because measures are more relaxed than they've ever been. We find out first that Boskova tested positive for COVID-19. And then after Barbara Krejcikova went out to Diane Parry in the first round saying that she just ran out of gas, she then tests positive for COVID-19 and has to pull out of doubles.
Right. So I was thinking, okay, if two players have it, there is a huge potential for this to spread in the women's locker room. They may have been playing while being infectious. Luckily, that did not happen.
To date.
So far. But Annette Kontaveit has said that she's really struggling with the after effects of having COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Irina Camelia Begu bounced her racket.
Should have been defaulted.
Yeah. Bounced her racket and it went into the crowd. Narrowly missed a child, but the child got scared and started crying. Why did she get to continue that match? These rules are so weird.
A $10,000 fine.
Rublev lost his shit
Again.
Bounces the ball off the court and nearly hits an official behind him. It actually looked like the ball knocked his hat off, but it looked like the official was trying to dodge the ball and knocked his own hat off. I mean, really, why are we parsing here? Why are we parsing nearly hit a child, nearly hit an official in the head? Forget it. Like, default.
Rublev, too, is constantly, literally, beating himself up during matches.
Yes. It's usually self-inflicted, I should say. Like, his anger is usually directed at himself. But I understand that the umpires are acting within the rules, but the rules need to change.
Rublev says he doesn't need to see anybody for his issues.
No, he's fine.
Totally fine.
Totally normal behavior. You wanted to talk about, or you are dragging me into talking about this Martina Navratilova crusade against trans women playing in women's sports.
Right. And it was prompted because at one point I had 3 Twitter accounts. My personal account, the BodyServe account, and then for a couple active years, I was running the Tennis Pods account. I've since deactivated that account. And I don't know which one it is, but almost every night I get an email with tweet roundups. It's so weird. And I usually...
You can turn those off, yeah.
I know, I'm just so lazy to do it. But lately, they almost all have been headlined by Chris Evert tweeting something having to do with Martina's crusade in support of.
Yes. Chris Evert was not involved in this for a long time. Martina's been on the subject for years, and Chrissy has only started chiming in recently. And I don't know what the decision-making process was. I don't know what sort of won her over, but...
I can tell you what doesn't hurt. That every time Martina or Chrissy tweets about this issue or delves into these waters, there is so much affirmation that comes in the replies.
There sure is.
It is one of the most depressing things because I would say minimum 90% of the scores of replies are like, oh my God, Queen, yes, stand up for women. Right. Stand up, protect women's sports. You were a champion back in the day. You're a champion now. We need you.
I don't want to get into the whole debate. If you want to hear the research, you can listen to one of our past episodes where we kind of detail it at length. But I cannot abide Martina Navratilova, this gay icon who purportedly, I mean, based on her Twitter timeline, is very much a hashtag resistance, left-wing, blue wave kind of person, going on Piers Morgan's talk show. Somebody who has made a career of attacking women, specifically black women. Mm-hmm. First of all, to talk about Naomi.
Well, I see this as an entryway to talk about
the real issue.
The real issue, right?
Because, so first of all, talking about Naomi Osaka's every word and every decision is an industry. People are making money off of it. It's generating clickbait. I wouldn't put it past some of these talk shows to pay their sources. This isn't exactly the Washington Post, as far as journalism ethics are concerned, okay? Anyway, Martina goes on Piers Morgan, who is a noted pig asshole.
Okay, are you done?
Why would she go on this show? A noted misogynist, a demonstrated one, to talk about Naomi Osaka. The most inconsequential, I like to play for points, so I don't know about Wimbledon. Who cares?
Is that even what she said specifically? Like,
who cares?
And then Martina says, I don't understand the mentality. Back in my day, I was playing for trophies. I wasn't playing for points or money. And at that point, I was like, girl,
We've got to snap back into reality here.
like, who are we kidding here? Back in the day, prize money was a blip compared to what it is today. You've talked about extensively about how many endorsements you lost once you were outed, once the world in the 80s, and it was a horrible thing to have happened to you, found out that you were a lesbian, that you lost a shit ton of money because of it. So, like, forgive me if I don't believe that.
Yeah. But she also talked about the issue of trans women in sport on the Piers Morgan show and said trans women participating in women's sports, quote, without mitigation will be the end of women's sports. And again, we hear the straw man of without mitigation, with no interference. There's no major league or association where trans women are participating with no mitigation. It's simply a lie. In the NCAA, there are this is actually a pretty loose, or it was up until a few months ago, a pretty loose regulation compared to a lot of leagues, have rules about testosterone levels and how far into someone's hormone replacement therapy they need to be in order to compete. So I think first we need to call out that straw man. Trans women are not asking to participate in women's sport without mitigation. Wherever you stand, we need to be honest.
But we kept being told that this is happening and it's going to be the end of women's sport.
And we're given a few anecdotes. Some of these anecdotes are from middle school, high school. We have Leylah Thomas as kind of the boogie woman, unfortunately for her. And we see mainstream stories in the New York Times kind of presenting this both sides very mainstream flip-floppy version of what's happening. And what the New York Times and what Martina Navratilova are not talking about, which is right beneath the surface, is that this fight is now mainstream because of far-right Christian organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom. That organization was not mentioned once in that New York Times piece that came out, that Christopher Clarey praised as being very thorough and very honest. The Alliance Defending Freedom wrote the legislation across many states, and it goes beyond sports, right? It bans hormone replacement therapy for kids, and in that legislation, we talked about this last year, they use Martina Navratilova's words. And she says she doesn't support that stuff, but those are her words. That is giving fuel to this actually very successful push.
And we know now that the same folks who for decades have been pushing for the repeal and abolition of Roe versus Wade, that is all but a reality now, that the next step is to come for queer people. Right, and like the sub-community within the LGBTQIA umbrella that's always going to be the first target and has been the first target continues to be trans people. Mm-hmm. Like, this is
an easy target.
This is a linear progression. This is not stopping. That train, that bus has left the station. And these people are getting free labor from Martina Navratilova to make this happen.
Right. And again, I'm not saying that she agrees with those folks, but we've seen in the past that some feminists will take the help from the far right, from the Christian right. It happened in the 70s against porn and sex work. It's happening now against trans women's participation in sport. And we need to be honest about it, whether you agree or not. And I don't want to debate trans women's participation in sport. I really have no interest. What I want to do is not obfuscate who the players are, where's the money, and who the real interests are behind this. So you have legendary sportswomen who are afraid that women's sports will be lost to big, strong, strapping trans women, right? The way that they talk about these people. But Martina is also retweeting hideous, hateful transphobes on her timeline. This isn't, I love trans people, but you've got to go through and see some of these retweets. The LGBT Alliance, a hate group that has removed the T from our community.
But this is exactly how she's even presenting it. She was on Piers Morgan saying, I want to be clear. I'm all for supporting trans women for being who they are in regular society, but...
Right. But look what's happening in the world to trans people and what will happen to the rest of us if we're not careful. But I feel like we're in a really, really dark period at the moment, and things could go left really easily. Like, progress is not linear.
In this case, go really, really right. Far right.
Exactly.
This segment was started. The transition from Naomi to the anti-trans rhetoric was started by Piers and her lamenting the fact that you can't even talk about this stuff without people just going off at you with the
cancel culture.
The fervor that people drum up, the furor, the rage for you just having an opinion. Well, newsflash, nobody's asking for this opinion.
And we're allowed to have opinions too.
No, but nobody's asking for this opinion. Truly. You have your platform on Twitter. You decide to tweet this stuff. You have made this your cause. So, like, don't be here trying to be like, oh no.
Basically, you're the victimized party.
Right.
Because trans people, we don't need to go through the statistics of suicide and murder of trans people. What I want is that if you're going to take on trans women in sport, but say, I love trans people otherwise, then I want to see you out there. I want to see you marching. I want to see you retweeting, donating money to trans causes other than sports. Because this is a persecuted minority within a minority. Like, your contribution has to be outsized if you're going to go on this crusade. I need you to prove it.
One of the more sinister aspects of this too is that her words and her opinions carry a certain amount of heft and is able to be used by the far right because of it, in large part because of her stature within our community.
Oh, of course, but more insidiously, it's being used by mainstream journalism. In the New York Times, you can see it as the rational opposition voice. Chris Clary tweeted today about how, Martina's views sound so reasonable. That's just not a studied view. In my view, the New York Times piece by Powell was a failure. It spoke to one sports administrator. And do you know who that was? Sebastian Coe. Okay,
who is a former athlete.
Yes, but also their trans athlete policy is currently in litigation. It's crazy to me that you wouldn't speak to people who actually work in sports.
Right, but
not just athletes.
We also get told all the time, I've done my research.
Well,
you should do your research. The scientists agree.
Which ones? Which peer-reviewed studies? Chris Evert tweeted at someone, do some research and stop being ignorant. And I just find it ironic.
Why? You're not going to say that without me asking you why.
Do I really? No, I'm not going to go further. Like, if you tell somebody to do their research, like, you better be armed with peer-reviewed studies.
Well, this is the time that we're in, right? Yeah. Everybody, with or without a formal education, can read something on the internet and then present it as fact, as having done research, and then use their pulpit to then say, this is the gospel.
What research did you do? So, anyway, I didn't really expect to get here, and we were talking the other day. You dragged me into this discussion
because I was really annoyed by
after
it. I was really annoyed.
No, I have to say, like, it makes me sick. It really does make me ill when I see stuff like this. These people were tweeting stuff like this on fucking Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. Christmas Day. Do you remember? Like, yes. It is actually really upsetting, which is why I think it's worth talking about. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about it in tennis. Martina and Chrissy are such icons, and they're people who I admire so much. It just sucks. There's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of research on this topic that still needs to be done. And I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying you need to come at this with love and care.
That parents should be the ones involved in making these decisions for their children. That state governments and federal governments should not be legislating children's bodies should not be making the adolescent lives of this already persecuted demographic even harder. Like, we know the statistics on suicide for lesbian and gay youth, let alone trans youth. Like, do these people think that this stuff is easy for trans youth to go through?
Right.
When it's talked about, like, if this happens, it will be the end of women's sport altogether, what you're doing is putting maybe an inadvertent target on the backs of trans youth. You're just putting an even bigger target on them, because we know what it's like in the majority of red voting America.
This is a convenient boogeyman, right? Like, this is a way to get votes. And I really honestly believe, like, once the far right get what they want from feminists, you're next. Like, abortion's out. Do you know what I mean? Like, once they have your sign on, they don't need you anymore.
What we're being told is the big problem is so infinitesimally small compared to the outsized burden borne by trans people. Right? Like, this is not, at the end of the day, this is not an issue.
And as far as the issues facing women's sports, we have a former USTA player suing the USTA because her coach groomed and abused her. The USTA has an active public list of 81 people banned from the USTA for sexual harassment and sexual abuse of players. This is an issue.
When you talk about what is actually detrimental to the development and survival of women's sport, this is nowhere near the front page. We're talking about getting eyes on women's sport, changing the chauvinistic, sexist, patriarchal culture that necessarily demeans and diminishes women's and girls' participation in sport. Like, that is, let's talk about, let's do work on that.
We're talking about athlete development programs that fostered and hid abuse for years. There are a lot of issues facing women's sport, and I can't agree that this is one of the big ones.
At how many levels of sport, from youth on up to college and professional, do girls and women get weeded out because of whatever structural fuckery that are the actual real life threats to the survival of women's sport?
Yeah. I think we should wrap up. What I want to leave you with is the ask to just interrogate who is supporting this, right? Who is saying hooray to what Martina is saying. And remember that the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. The support you're getting is not necessarily good support.
And the fact that scores upon scores of regular Joes and Nancys are like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, go you two, that doesn't mean anything. Like,
and then they go vote for Trump.
Right? Like, studies on all manner of trans issues are still very new. Still very new. There's so much that that everybody doesn't know about. So, like, when people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense, it makes sense in the context of what? That is not affirmation of anything. You wanted to add a follow-up on...
Did I? I think you wanted me. So we cut this part from the last episode because I don't think I articulated myself very well. But back to the Wimbledon ban of Russian players and then the WTA and ATP's decision to rescind points from the tournament. They leaned on the language of discrimination. Like, it was rooted in human rights. Discrimination by nationality. And I just wanted to point out that I'm not saying that I agree with the decision, because I don't think I do, to ban Russian players, but to call it discrimination is misleading, and I think incorrect. Because in the world of international relations, this is actually a sanction, right? This is saying a nation's actions are reprehensible, and we're taking action in whatever little way we can. If you banned the South African Davis Cup team, would you have called it discrimination by nationality? No, I don't think so, because in the Western world, it was pretty universally held that South African apartheid was wrong, At least by the time that we reach the 80s, you know? Bruce Springsteen and everybody refusing to play in South Africa. Major sports leagues banning them. I think, to me, the language of discrimination rings a little bit hollow in this case, because there does have to be some room for political action by sanction. And again, it's really more of a linguistic choice, because I'm not even saying I agree with Wimbledon's choice. Mm-hmm. Was that okay?
I have nothing further to add on this. I just know that this was something that it lingered with you for a while.
It did, yeah. I think because I read it closely and I was like, that doesn't feel quite right to me.
It also doesn't jive with what we hold to be discrimination based on quote unquote protected classes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah. Mid Roland Garros episode done. We have a title. What is it? I know you have it written here somewhere.
If is a dangerous word.
Yeah.
If is a dangerous word.
No. If it's a very dangerous word.
If doesn't exist. That was the first version.
Mm-hmm. If Nadal played Djokovic at midday instead of at night under the roof, would this have happened? Would this have happened? If his back didn't get hurt in 2014, where would he be? Where would Stan be? Like,
if doesn't exist.
It's a very useful way to live your life.
Wouldn't it be amazing not to have to learn the conjunctive tense in a foreign language? If doesn't exist, you don't need to know.
Oh my God.
That would be so nice.
I think it's even more useful to live your life by not being rigidly adherent to the if, because then you can just move on.
I feel that's very like Zen Buddhism.
Okay. Thank you for listening. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. This is The Body Serve. You can find us everywhere if you go to linktree.com/thebodyserve. All our links to everything, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. That's all there. If you've enjoyed the show, hit us up with a review. Those are always fun, provided they are 5 stars. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.